Hello. Here we go with a episode of Natives Talking to Natives, because I think that's even better than Natives Helping Natives, because that's my charity, and I didn't have a damn thing to think of when we started this thing, but now I think all of a sudden this morning, I think Natives Talking to Natives is a lot darn better. So
I like that.
That's where we are, or the person at the next table, and this is where we are, and so it's very fun. We have Dan Mackin back, and I'll tell you what, the last time he talked to us, it was just so amazing and magical that I can't wait to hear what he's got to say today. So we were already talking before we got started, and I go, whoa, we got to get this on tape.
Rewind.
I mean, this is too magical. Okay, Dan, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Love it. Just excited. Can we talk about where we're at chocolate bars, or what do we want to talk about here?
Well, I don't know if I told you about what happened after I left El Salvador.
I don't think so, but it's worth
Okay, so I was wanted by the police. Fred and Audrey, the people I lived with, were wanted by the Salvadorian Navy. And Jeff had yet to get into trouble, but he would. Mm-hmm. So I left there, and I got up to the main highway in Acajutla. And I was standing there waiting for a bus, and these Americans showed up in this VW bus, and I couldn't believe it. I had never seen any down there. And they looked at me and thought, what the hell is this gringo doing out there on the side of the road with a surfboard in the middle of nowhere? So they probably felt sorry for me, so they picked me up. And I was going to Costa Rica, and they were going to Costa Rica, so it was perfect. So we get through Honduras, into Nicaragua, past Managua, and it was getting really late. So we decided to pull over. There was no place to really pull over. There was just a shoulder. So we pulled off on a shoulder, and it was really, really a dark night. There was no moon hardly. And I looked by the side of the road, and there was these two trees that were kind of leaning at a 45-degree angle away from the highway. And it looked like there was a little ditch underneath them. So I strung up my hammock. I kind of laid on the trees, and I strung up my hammock and just kind of jumped in. And had a great night's sleep. The next morning, we're all getting up, we were yawning and everything, and they're getting on the bus and yawning. And I have one leg over the hammock, and they said, wait. And I said, what? And they said, look down. And I looked down, and it was an 80-foot cliff. I was hanging over an 80-foot cliff. If I would have hopped out, I would have just gone straight to the bottom. So I thought, oh, this is no ditch. So I had to climb out of the hammock, and that night I jumped in. If I would have missed the hammock.
Oh, you would have kept going.
Yeah. Anyway, so climbed up the hammock, climbed down the tree, got down to Costa Rica, and there was a turnoff for Playas del Coco, and I had a crewing job on this sailboat on a 57-foot yawl. So I hitchhiked down to Playas del Coco from there, and I see the boat out there, the beautiful 57-foot racing yawl, old racing yawl. And so they were about 300 yards out because they had a real deep keel. So I paddled my surfboard out there and told them I was there. And we got my stuff. I settled in. I had my own bunk. It was like going from a canoe to a cruise ship, I mean, it was like, this is great. I'm going to love this. So, so this, the boats go up and down the coast of Central America, and that's how you kind of communicate with each other. And this boat was going north, and they said, hey, Jeff is down in, he was my partner on my sailboat. And they said, Jeff is down in Boca de Barranca, and he said, the surf is really good, and he wants you to come down. And I said, okay. So I said, Mark, you're not going anywhere soon. He was the owner of the boat. And he said, no, go ahead. So it was him and his girlfriend and his sister and I. That's the crew. So I hitchhiked out to the main road, then hitchhiked halfway down to Boca de Barranca. This guy let me off. He was going to his farm. So I was in the middle of nowhere. like around 10 o'clock at night, and there was no traffic. And I sat by the side of the highway all night waiting for a car. Finally, about 7 in the morning, this guy came by and he picked me up, and he was going to go to Punta Arenas, which is right on the way to, right after Boca de Bronca. So he left me off, and it's just this little village. I thought it was a town, but it was just like 2 rows of houses, like maybe 8 houses. And I looked for the littlest, crummiest one, and I knew that's where Jeff would be.
Oh, no.
And it was. I knocked on his door, and sure enough, Jeff answered the door. And he said, "Danny, how did you know where I live?" And I said, "Well, I know you since you were 4 years old, you know." I know. Yeah. So when he opened the door, I noticed the door almost fell off the hinge, and I said, What happened to your door?" You know, and he said, "Oh, it's a long story. I'll tell you about it. Let's go surfing out. You know, I got this great place in Boca." So we go down there, and it's a river mouth. And it's brown water. You couldn't even see your hand an inch under the water. It's a river flowing out to the ocean with logs and gators and who knows what floating out there. Yeah. So I said, "Are you sure this is okay?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, I go out here every day. But when Jeff says it's okay, it's questionable, you know." So we go out there, and there's no place to eat. There's nothing. You know, I mean, it's just riverbanks. So we're out there all day, and I hadn't slept all night. I hadn't eaten anything, you know. So, you know, normally you go surfing for 2 or 3 hours. Yep. You get out, you have something to drink, get some, yeah. So we were there all day till 5 o'clock, and I was just wiped out. And you know, you're kind of nervous the whole time because you can't lose your board, because if you do, it's going to go out in the Pacific, and so will you. So finally around 5, I said, "Jeff, you know, I'm starving to death." And he said, "Oh, I know this great place. When you buy a beer, you get a free hors d'oeuvre." And he's really cheap. So as you've gathered by now. And I thought, well, yeah, that's okay. And he said, "Well, it's the only place around." I said, "Well, yeah, that'll be fine." So we go in there, you know, and we're having a beer. Well, the hors d'oeuvre was a raw turtle egg in a shot glass with Tabasco sauce on it. So it's not something you can bite into, you know. You got to go and wash it down with a beer real quick. So we're sitting there drinking beers and eating these raw turtle eggs, and I said, "What happened to your door?" And he said, "Oh, that's a long story." And I said, "Well, you know, I'm here." And he said, "Well, okay, yeah, well, you remember your girlfriend Monica?" And I said, "Yeah, I went out with her for 2 months. You know, I went up to her house in San Salvador at the time. This is in Acajutla. I met this girl, and we went out for a couple months, and it kind of faded out." And he said, "Well, remember when you and Graham went up to Guatemala and Belize?" I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, Monica and I kind of got together." I said, "Okay." And he said, "I decided to go to Costa Rica." And I asked her if she wanted to go with me, and she said, yeah, she wanted to get away from her mom. She was from this very wealthy family in San Salvador, a big mansion and everything. So he and Monica took off, and Monica left a "Dear Mommy" note, you know, "I'm leaving with Jeff to Costa Rica." Well, Monica's mom just, you know, blew their top, and she told the police that Jeff had kidnapped her daughter. So on the papers of the front page, here's Jeff's picture. "North American kidnaps prominent daughter of prominent family in San Salvador." You know, so all the cops are looking for Jeff, you know, this kidnapper, international criminal, you know. And so they found out they were down in Boca de Bronca in that same house. And around 6 in the morning, they kicked the door in, and that's why I was hanging by one hinge. Well, they pulled them both out of bed, made them get dressed, threw Jeff in jail, put Monica in the police station on a phone to her mother, and she said, "Mommy didn't kidnap me. I went, you know, voluntarily." And she said, "I don't care. You get home right now." And she said, "Mom, I'm not coming home unless you tell the police that he didn't kidnap me and let him out of jail." So this went on for 3 or 4 days. Meanwhile, Jeff is in jail going, what is going to happen to me, you know, and he doesn't know. So finally, they let him out of jail, you know, and he goes back to Boca de Bronca. And, that's what happened. So I'm thinking, well, that's an interesting story. So you got thrown in jail. I got thrown in jail. Fred and Audrey, the Navy is after them. So, we're all wanted by the Salvadoranian government. Anyway, so after about 8 beers, and 8 turtle eggs, I wasn't feeling my best. So we go back to his house, and I'm looking at his house, and it's kind of really stuffy, and it's a bed and a concrete floor. He said, Danny, I'll lay down some towels for you and you can sleep on the floor. And I said, I think I'm going to sleep outside. And because the road was a sand road, so it'd be softer than a concrete floor. And I went out there and I saw this Volkswagen bus. And they sit real high off the ground, like over a foot. So I thought, I'll just crawl underneath that. I'll be out of the rain. Be perfect. So I crawled underneath there. I fell asleep. Next morning, I opened my eyes and I looked up, and there's a pretty blue sky and clouds and palm trees. And I'm going, wait a minute. There was a bus parked here. And I sat up when I went, oh, my God. And I followed the tire tracks, and they went within a half an inch of where my head was.
No.
Yeah, my head made an indentation in sand, and the tire tracks went just within a half an inch of them.
How did you not wake up?
I don't know. I was tired.
Well, and so the beers.
Beers are turtle eggs.
And turtle eggs.
Yeah, the combination
and
kind of like a sleeping pill.
Is it tomato juice with the turtle egg and
just
hot
Tabasco.
Sauce. Just Tabasco.
Oh. So I was sitting there and going, oh my God, I'm imagining, them pulling out on the bus and turning a little sharper and going thunk, and hey, Fred, you just ran over a coconut. Ha, ha, ha. Oh, that was the guy's head. So I went back to Jeff's house, and I said, Jeff, I think I better get back to World War II. I think they need me up there, them crewing on the boat. He said, oh, okay, well, I'll see you, Danny. Maybe I'll see you in Golfito. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll see you in Golfito. So I hitchhiked back to the boat. And
with your surfboard.
Oh yeah,
and your bag. How big a bag would you have?
Just like this big.
Yeah,
all I had was like 4 pairs of shorts and 5 T-shirts.
Yep.
Anyway, and a couple of towels. And so I get back to the boat, and Mark said, "Hey Dan, Lisa and I and Patty are going to go to San Jose." And I said, I'm kind of done traveling for a while. I'd just like to take it easy, and sleep in the same bunk for at least 1 night, 2 nights in a row, and have a little peace and quiet. I'm a little tired of hitchhiking and all that. And so he said, yeah, okay. I said, besides that, it's Chubasco season, and somebody should be here to watch the boat, which was true. And so I said, let's put out an extra anchor just in case we get hit. These Chubascos are horrible. See, you don't have any hurricanes south of Acapulco. They form outside Acapulco and they go north. But south of Acapulco and into Central America, you get these very severe storms called Chubascos. And the wind will be dead calm. And within 3 minutes, it'll be blowing 70, 80, 90 miles an hour with lightning everywhere and horizontal rain. And they hit just like that, and they come out of nowhere, and there's no warning. So you got to really be prepared during Chubasco season, because they happen pretty frequently. We got in a bunch of them. Anyway, so we put out an extra anchor, because it'd be hard for me to do that. It would be impossible for me to put out an extra anchor in a Chubasco. So they left. And then the next day, this boat pulls in, and they wave over and they say, hey, come on over for dinner. Yeah, okay. And the normal thing to do, you bring a stack of books with you that you've already read, and you trade books. So I went over there, we had cocktails, had dinner, it was really nice, and gave them these books, and they gave me a stack of books, and one of them was I looked at it and I said, what's The Exorcist? And they said, oh my God, don't read that alone. It's the scariest book we've ever read and all this stuff. And I said, oh, it can't be that scary, so... That night I started reading it, and I'm into it, and the whole next day I'm reading this book, and I just can't put it down. I'm wondering, if her head is going to spin off or what, I mean, girls, I don't know if you've seen the movie, but the book is scarier than the movie, because you have to imagine all this stuff, the devil there and everything, and so I couldn't stop reading it, and it got to 3 o'clock in the morning. And I just finished it. And you know, when you finish a book like that, you go, oh my God, I got to slow down my heart a little bit, you know, so I don't have a heart attack, you know. And I'm laying there like this, and all of a sudden I heard this boom. I went, oh crap, somebody just stepped aboard the boat. So I reached up and I turned off the lantern, and I snuck into the galley, and I opened the door, and I grabbed the biggest knife I could find, and I didn't open the hatch. I snuck through underneath the hatch, and I went out there looking, and it was a real dark night, and I didn't see anybody, and it was my surfboard. Somebody had untied it, and a little breeze picked up and blew it, and it hit the deck, and that's what that was. So I said, oh, thank God. So I put the knife down, and I said, bam, this Chubasco hits. And it just picked my surfboard up and flew it, and it was flying into the water. And I didn't even think, because, you know, there's no surfboard shops in Central America in 1972.
No.
So overboard I went, and I'm swimming after this thing, and the wind is blowing 60, 70, 80 miles an hour. The seas are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I swam for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And you know, because being a surfer, you know how long you've been in the water. And I figured I'm about 2.5, maybe almost 3 miles out by now, because the current was taking me out as well. And the seas went from 2 to 4 to 4 to 6 to 6 to 8. And white, you know, breaking, and I could see lightning would flash. I'd see my surfboard out there on the next swell, and I thought, I'm at the point of no return. If I don't get that board, I'm not going to get back in. There's just no way I'm going to make it. So kept on going. I finally got it, and I got on it, and I was kind of sitting on it, kind of paddling towards the weather so I could stay in one spot maybe. And I was going over these swells, and I'm looking around for the horizon because the sun started to come up. But it was so overcast and cloudy, you couldn't tell where the sun was. So I didn't know which way land was. So I'm riding these swells up, and I'm looking around real fast, like, and then down in the trough, you know, and then up again, and I'm looking around, you know, every time I was at the top of the swell, I'd look around, where's the land, you know. So finally, I see this little tiny jagged edge out there, you know, and that was the mountain range. You know, so now I know where land is. So I paddled. I got back to the boat at 9 o'clock in the morning.
No.
I'd been in the water for 6 hours.
Oh.
But I got the surfboard. I should have just let it go. Anyway, so there was a little bit, we had a little argument after that, you know, never do that again, you know. Anyway, you run away again and you're gone. Yeah. Anyway, so we went down, we that's, after that is when we got arrested and deported and, you know, stayed in Costa Rica, of course. Got to Panama, and I got a crewing job offer to go to the South Pacific. And I thought, well, I'm going to be gone for 5 years. So it was Christmas Eve morning. So I went into Panama City, and I got a flight from Panama City to L.A., and I got one of those, you know, shuttles to my house, my parents' house. And my whole family was there. It was Christmas Eve. I got there about 7 o'clock in the evening on Christmas Eve. Oh, Danny, oh, man, I haven't seen you for over a year, you know. Where you been? Are you okay? I heard you burn your face off, you know. You're not blind? And no, I think I'm here, and I can see everybody, you know. You know, so my brother was 4 years younger than me, and he was ahead of me in college. And I thought, you know, I got the GI Bill. I should get out of Never Land and grow up and go back to school. So he was living in San Jose, and I wanted to go to school in Mexico, but you needed a high grade point average. So I went up there with him. I took one semester, and I needed 17 units of A's, and I got 17 units of A's, and I got accepted to school down in Mexico. So it was like July, mid-July, and I was going to move down there, and I had this Volkswagen bus. It was a van.
Okay.
And I you know, I wrote Maria a letter. That's the woman in San Blas. She's in here. Okay. I wrote her a letter. I said, you know, I'm going to come down, and of course it was fine. And she wouldn't charge me any money for staying in her house. She'd move into the house next door, which was her sister's house. So I'd always get her a big box of towels and sheets and a clock radio and a blender and all this stuff that she couldn't afford or get down there. And so I always had a care box for her. So I said, Bruce, you want to go down? I'm going to go down to San Blas for a couple weeks and go surfing. And he said, yeah, okay, let's go. So we get in the bus, we drive down there, and we didn't realize that a hurricane had just blown through San Blas like a couple weeks before. So there's no bridge and there's no road. So these guys got these pongas together, and they tied them all together with boards across them, and I drove my bus on top of them, and they ferried them across on these pongas. And I thought, this is insane. I'm gonna lose my bus and lose my life. So. But we did make it across, and we got to Maria's house. We stayed there for 2 weeks, and we went surfing every day. And so
still got surfing.
Oh yeah, so it was the same board too. Anyway, and this is like a year and a half later. So anyway, so we leave the state of Nayarit. Now Mexico's 31 states, and each state has its own governor and all that stuff. So we get to the state line of Jalisco, where Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta, those places are. It's a pretty big state. And there were guards there, which is not really usual. And it kind of surprised me. I forgot to put the 50 peso bill on my passport, so they would just stamp it and let me go. I didn't have time to do that. They kind of caught me off guard, so they pulled us over. And they said, where have you been? And stupidly, I said San Blas, because that's where surfers go, and there's pot down there. And I shouldn't have said that. But it was kind of obvious when they saw the surfboards in the back, and so, okay, everything out. So everything that I owned, which was in 3 boxes, they dumped out along the side of the road, opened the backpacks, got the surfboards out. Just everything was all over the side of the road, I'm going, oh, man. So about a year and a half earlier, I'd met this woman named Maria Urquiza de Los Angeles. And it turned out, I didn't know this at the time, but there were 7 families that ran Mexico. They picked the next president. They ran the whole country. And she was a member of one of those families, and I didn't know this. And then I found out, she said, oh, you're going to go through Querétaro. Why don't you stop by my cousin's house? He's the governor. So, this family is pretty well known. So anyway, he pulled out what the guard did. After all her stuff is all over the place, I had Maria's card in my wallet. That was my get-out-of-jail-free card, if you play Monopoly. So, he pulled out what looked like a marijuana cigarette. He said, we found this in your stuff. And I said, you don't smuggle drugs into Mexico. You smuggle them going the other way. You go north. You don't go south with drugs. And I said, that's not ours. And he said, well, that's 10 years in prison. And I said, well, before you arrest me, could you please call my girlfriend, and I showed him the card, and tell her why I'm not going to make it to her cousin's house on Sunday for his birthday party. He's the governor of Querétaro. Mm-hmm. And he looked at the card and he studied it for a while. And he said, oh, no problem. Okay, no problem, And he told the other guy, okay, let's pack up their stuff, So they helped us pack up all our stuff. We got back in the van. We go, and we're driving down in Jalisco now. And there's this town called Magdalena. And it's where they mine all the opals. And we're driving through Magdalena. And there's all these kids on every corner with these jars of opals. They're unpolished, but they're jars of opal. So I thought, this is pretty crazy. So I pulled over and I said, how much you want for the jar? 50 pesos, $4 for a jar. Yeah, okay, here's 50 pesos. And I said, oh, here, have a candy bar. They, oh, God. And all of a sudden, every kid on every corner of the entire town was swept down in our van. I was trading these candy bars, which were given to me by our former landlord. I was trading candy bars for jars of opals. I couldn't believe it, and now I had a big, gigantic box full of opals instead of candy bars, and I said, I think that's a pretty good trade. So the next town is called Tequila. So we stopped and had a few samples from their distilleries down there. And then, of course, we had to go to Guadalajara and Mariachi Square, and all the mariachis playing and everything, and then from there we took off and we were in Michoacan. It got really late. It was around midnight, and we were both really tired. And I decided to pull off because he was too tired to drive. And I pulled off. It's a good idea to pull off the highway because you don't want to be on the highway. Anyway, so I pulled off a ways. It was right outside of this little town. And we shut the car off, and I slept across the seats, and he slept on the floor. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, I had this horrible nightmare. And it was this woman dressed in black, and she had this little girl with her dressed in black, and she was weeping, and she had this candle. And we were walking down this corridor with all these cobwebs everywhere, and she was going, "Oh," like that. And then we get to the end, and there's this candelabra with one candle lit. And she turns around and looks at me and went, "Whoa!" And he went, "Whoa!" And Bruce and I are both going, "Whoa!" at the same time, looking at each other and go, "Whoa! Whoa!" It happened at the exact same time, we're going, "Whoa!" And I said, "What happened?" He said, "Oh, I had this horrible nightmare. I was following this woman with a candle. She was weeping. She had this little kid." Oh, my God. And I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, we got to the end of the corridor type thing." And he said, "There was a mantle with a candelabra on it, and one candle was lit." And she turned around and looked at me, and that's when I woke up. I said, "Oh, my God, I had the exact same dream at the exact same time." Now, how does that happen?
Right. I don't know.
So I said, "Let's get the hell out of here." So got in the driver's seat, fired up the van, turned the lights. Headstones everywhere. We were parked in the middle of a graveyard.
Oh.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So pulled out of there, and yeah. So we were going, "Oh my God!"
Now it makes sense, boy. Oh.
Well, you had the same exact dream.
Well, and it gets better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we get to Mexico City. And there's protesters everywhere. And it's, live the communist revolution of Mexico with hammers and sickles. Thousands of people everywhere, soldiers lined up all along the curbs with rifles holding people back, just almost on the verge of a riot. And I thought, oh my God, I'm moving down to a country that's on the verge of a communist revolution. And I'm a gringo. I'm the last person you want to be down here,
It doesn't gonna work.
Great timing.
No, not good timing at all. So I thought, oh my God, I can't find a place to pull over to let him off. So I see this big, long, empty curb, and I thought, oh, this is great. Well, I didn't notice the 25 no parking signs. I pulled off there, and I'm getting Bruce's surfboard out in his backpack, and I look, and from me, not 6 feet away, I'm looking at the president of Mexico. And on his right arm is this woman dressed in black, weeping.
No.
And on his left arm is this little girl dressed in black, weeping. Oh. It was the people in our dreams. Whoa. And I look at Bruce, and he looks at me, and these soldiers just rushed up, and they're hitting us with their, with their rifles, and throwing me in the van, and they skirted him off. We didn't even have time to say goodbye or anything, So I'm going, oh, what was that, And I turned around, and there was this big limo, presidential limo, honking the horn. I took the president of Mexico's parking spot at the airport. So I guess that's why they rushed us off like that. So I find the road to Cholula, and I get down to Cholula. I had never been there. I'm driving along one of the streets, I look, and there's this there's an American couple walking down the street, and I pulled over and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" I introduced myself, and I said, "I'm looking for a place to live," and they said, "Well, yeah, we live up there, right there above the barber shop, and Emilio has that pharmacy there. He has that 1-bedroom apartment up there that he's going to rent." And I said, "Well, what do rents cost?" And he said, "Around $20 a month." And I said, "Yeah, I can do that." I only had $65 left. I wasn't that prepared to go down to move to school down there. So anyway, we went to out to lunch because it was siesta and everything was closed. So we went out to lunch and we went to the Zocalo. It was a huge Zocalo for a town of 13,000 people. And he said, this is the area where Cortez and his men stayed and almost got slaughtered by the Tlaxcalans. And I don't know if you want to go into any of that history, but
no,
yeah, I'll do it in 5 minutes.
Okay.
I'll do a 5-minute history of Mexico. So Malinche, Cortez's girlfriend, found out, she's also kind of a spy, she found out that the Tlaxcalans and the Cholulans hated each other. And the Cholulans were allies with Montezuma. Montezuma wanted to protect Cortez. So 30,000 warriors came over the wall of Cholula, but they were ready for him. And the battle lasted all day and into the night. And the Cholulans prevailed. And of course, they took as many prisoners as they could because, you know, they were always running short on people to sacrifice, you know, chop their chests open, pull their hearts out.
Pull their hearts out.
So they were, because it was one-time use only kind of thing, you know. So they always needed plenty of those. So anyway, Cortez marches on to Mexico City, and he gets there, and Montezuma's, oh, Cortez, you know, my new good buddy, you know, and to pay Montezuma back for all his kindness and everything, Cortez and his men kidnap him. And they hold him from ransom. So they got all this gold and silver and jewels and everything, you know, and they loaded their armor up with it and headed out of Mexico City, and they fought their way out of Mexico City. And after that, Montezuma lost face, and I don't remember what happened to him because I wasn't there at the time. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they fight their way back to the coast of Veracruz. He goes back to Spain. He shows the king all this stuff, and he said, man, this place is like an ATM machine, you know? You just put your card in and boom. And king says, yeah, go back there. So they went back there and they conquered. They were conquered. So they go to Cholula. And Cholula had about 300,000 people at the time. And they had the 76 pyramids all over town. And the Spaniards said, okay, you have to knock down every pyramid and use those materials to build a Catholic church. So that's why Cholula had 76 churches. For a town of 13,000 people, they had 76 churches.
Wow.
So obviously they call it the city of churches. I can't figure out why they do that, but anyway, so, you know, so on Sundays, you know, it'd be, hey Juan, where do you want to go to church? You know, one down the street. Oh, the newer one? Yeah, that one that was built 400 years ago. Yeah. So, you know, so they'd go to church every Sunday, and then afterwards, you know, while everybody's taking a siesta, the guy would usually sneak out and go to these pulque bars, you know, and they'd order these pitchers of pulque. Pulque is, you know, when they make the tequila, before they distill it, they make this stuff called pulque, and it's like about a 10%. Tastes. I didn't like the taste of it, but anyway, it tastes kind of like beer, and I don't know how to describe it. But they'd get pictures of it, these little pictures. They'd be drinking these pictures, you know, and then the wife would come get them, you know, around 4 or 5 o'clock. The wife, you know, where's Juan? Oh, he's at the pulque bar. Yeah, of course, you know. Yeah. So they'd go there, and you'd see these guys from 4 to 6 in the afternoon every Sunday. It was like this show. You'd see these guys doing the crab walk, you know, or they're looking straight ahead and walking sideways, you know. Wives would be taking them back to there. Anyway. So after lunch, I talked to Emilio, and he said, yeah, $18 a month for this apartment. I said, yeah, great. So then the next day I went to school to register to get in. And, you know, they had all my grades and all that, transcripts, and they said, yeah, it's $400 tuition for the quarter. And I had $45 left. And I said, do you guys ever give out any scholarships? And they said, yeah, Dr. Hillbink, in fact, the registrar is looking for a native English speaker to help him out and some clerical stuff. And I said, great, can I meet him? And they said, yeah, here he is, right here. He took me into his office, and he looked at my grades and everything, and he said, do you speak Spanish? I said, yeah, I speak Spanish. And he said, you know, oh, I see you took English classes. And I already had a year and a half of college, actually 2 years. And he said, yeah, your grades look pretty good. Would you like to work for me? And I said, sure. And he said, okay, you looking for a scholarship? And I said, yes. And he said, well, what percent roughly? And I said, 100%. He said, okay, 100%. So he gave it to me, you know. filled out the paperwork, gave it to me. He said, by the way, you can call me Ron, we're pretty informal around here. So, and it was, but it was fun. I only worked an hour or two a day after school, and school was only 4 days a week. So, but I worked in the administration building, so I met the president and the chief of police and the dean of students and all that, and it was fun for me. So anyway, I loved going to school down there. We just had a ball.
Better than San Jose.
Oh yeah. The first Thursday of every month, they'd have mariachis come into the dining hall. And they had beers and tacos for 10 cents, and everybody was dancing. And so the second week of school, so eventually my brother and there were like 9 of us from Pasadena because they found out about it, the word got out.
Right.
They all wanted to go to the University of Americas, this just sounds like real, and it was fun. It was like a big resort, 300 acres, rolling hills, swimming pools, tennis courts. I mean, it was like, it was like a 4 seasons for students, And there was only 6 students per class. They had a limit. You can only have 6 students. So we got to know our professors real well. So the second week of school, when we rented this big house, it's 7 bedrooms, 3 stories. The 3rd story didn't have a roof on it, but it had all the windows and everything. Anyway, so he put a bunch of furniture up there because it was a nice view. And we had a full-time maid, and we paid her twice the normal rate. And the rent was $85 a month. So 5 people living there with a full-time maid, and rent was $25 a month apiece.
Wow.
So I ran for the Senate and won. And the first thing I did is appoint my girlfriend and her best friend on the publication board because the previous whole newspaper staff got expelled, and then if they were foreigners, they got deported because they kept on running bad things about President Echeverria, calling him a crook and all. And the administration kept on warning him not to do that, and finally they put so much pressure on the university that they said, okay, you guys are out of here. So they had no newspaper staff. So I thought this would be cool. I have my own office, and so I got them on the publication board. They appointed me as editor. I appointed Bruce as art director. I appointed my good buddy from high school, Kenny. He was going to be the managing editor. Arlene, a friend of ours from Pasadena, she was going to be the social columnist. Grant, one of our roommates who played rugby, he was going to be the sports editor. And then we had about 6 Americans and about 6 Mexicans on the staff. So because it was a bilingual newspaper. So we all had. So what we did is that we had this big office on upstairs from the student union. Across the courtyard, there was this deli. So we ran little ads in a newspaper for the deli and trade for food. So we'd have free lunches every day. And then we decided, why don't we get all these discos and bars along what we called the Miracle Mile, the road on the way from Cholula. So we got all them. We gave them full-page ads, and we were getting all this advertising money. And one bar owed us like 150 rum and cokes, and you go in there and buy everybody in the bar a drink, And the dean of students called me and he said, Daniel, what are you doing with all this money you're getting from all this advertising? And I said, it's for the newspaper. And he said, we pay for everything. I said, well, it's for the staff, for the morale. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, we take them out to dinner and buy them drinks and stuff, keep the morale up, And he said, what? And I said, well, you'll be invited to the next one,
What did he say?
He said, oh, get out of here,
So that was the end of it?
Yeah, that was the end of that. He said, he gave up. There's nothing, anyway. So my brother and I, when we first moved into this house, school hadn't started yet, and it was a huge house. We didn't have any furniture. So I said, why don't we go to the student union? Did I tell this story?
I don't think so.
And we'll borrow some of the furniture in there. Oh, so I had my van. We pulled it up to the
good.
Yeah, I pulled it up to the back door of the student union. We're loading in couches and overstuffed chairs and big potted plants, and go back to the house, and unload it. And God, it still looks kind of barren. So we go back and we get this dining room table and all these dining room chairs and another overstuffed chair and more pots and plants. And we have, the student union was half empty.
No.
We took most of the furniture. We had 2 giant loads in this van, you know. And we said, yeah, this was pretty good, you know. And all right, so a couple of weeks into school, we had this big party. Like 250 people showed up, and we had a bunch of faculty members, probably 20 or 30 faculty members, and the dean of students, the chief of police, and you know, a lot of people from the registrar, you know, all the administration were there, and we had our maid squeeze 3 gallons of orange juice. Wow. We had this cooler, 5-gallon cooler. Wow. So she squeezed 3 gallons of fresh orange juice, and we put 2 gallons of tequila in it, and added some grenadine, and so we had tequila sunrises. Right.
Yep.
But they were in a cooler, so you just walk up with a cup, and you know, you had a tequila and a bathtub full of beers, and so the dean of students came in with the chief of police, and they're looking around, they're saying, that's what happened to all that furniture. And I said, yeah, we just thought we'd borrow it for a while, you know. And they said, that's okay, just return it when you graduate, you know. No problem, don't worry about it, you know. So
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, oh yeah. So, well, the first thing I did with the newspaper, I did an article on the chief of police. Because he was just a well-known journalist. He was crime beat in the biggest newspaper in Mexico City. So I put him on the front page, you know, 4 big pictures of him sitting in his office like this and talking on the phone and thinking and writing, you know. Saying what a great chief of police he was, you know, and in English on one side, Spanish on the other. And he saw the newspaper and came in and, Daniel, oh, he gave me a big hug and everything. He said, this is fantastico, you know. You know, and he got like a couple dozen copies of it, you know, to give to his family and friends and everything, you know. And so, and then we were tight, we were buddies. So, you know, that's why when he looked at the furniture, Danielle can do no wrong, you know. It was fine. You can do whatever you want, you know. So.
Even take furniture for as long as he wanted.
Yeah.
And plants.
Yeah, and the plants. Big potted plants, big ones. Anyway, so my brother taught marketing in the school of business. I was the editor of the newspaper, and one of our roommates was a basketball player. There were 5 of us living there, and we just had so much fun. I'd like to take this country road to school every day, and did I tell you the stop sign story?
I don't remember.
Anyway, so there's this cop always sitting there in a cop car. It's this country road in the middle of nowhere. And there's a stop sign there, and nobody used the road. Yeah. And so I'd stop at the stop sign every day and then proceed, and you know, your ticket, you know, how much is the fine? 10 pesos. So after about a week of this, I asked him, I said, how much would the fine be if I ran this stop sign every single day until I graduated? And he's sitting there and he's thinking for a while. He said, 100 pesos. I said, okay, that's $8. So I gave him 100 pesos. And I said, what's your name? And he said, Juan. And I said, I'm Daniel. Mucho gusto, Juan, you know. And so I said, okay. So I went off to school. And next day, you know, I'm coming to school and I see him. And I run right through the stop sign. Hola, Juan. Hola, Daniel. That's how it was every single day for the whole rest of the time I was at the university. Wow. Hola, Juan. Hola, Daniel. Anyway, so I got to run the stop sign every day for the whole time I was at the university. So to wrap this up, when I was graduating, I went an extra semester, and I was going to graduate with my master's degree. So we went with a group of other guys from the university, and they grew up in Mexico. We went down to Yucatan and saw ruins down there in the Caribbean, you know, along there, and down to Guatemala and Chiapas and all over. We were gone for the break was about 3 weeks, and there had been tensions building at the university, and we had kind of fixed the last presidential election to get our guy in there. Yeah, we swung the election.
Kind of fixed it.
Yeah, well, we did fix it. Anyway, so our guy got in, but what happened was that it was the engineering department, School of Engineering versus the School of Liberal Arts. They wanted to lean more towards the School of Engineering. Mm. We wanted it to remain both, and we were losing, and because our president was an engineer.
Oh.
So we had the cards stacked against us. So what happened while we were gone is the professors in the School of Liberal Arts formed a union and went on strike. They shut the university down. And there was a Jeep, an Army Jeep with a 50 caliber machine guns and soldiers guarding the gate, the front gate. You couldn't get in. And all the students and the faculty that went on strike were inside the university campus. Well, I mean, the campus was 300 acres. Right. So, you could sneak out under the fence and go into town and have lunch and come back, Yeah, we're in here at prison. How can they guard, 300 acres, The whole army couldn't do that. So we wound up graduating at our rival university, University of Puebla. But what happened was our professors said, don't worry, you can take your classes at our houses, and you can still graduate. So I had 3 classes to go, and I went to my professors' houses every day. There were 6 of us doing the same program. So we went from house to house every day, 4 days a week. And we finished all our coursework and graduated with honors at the University of Puebla. And but there's one more story I want to tell you if we have time. Okay, so I'd just gotten there. Did I tell you about the Army, the story with the campesinos taking over the... Anyway, there was all these tensions with the farmers, the local farmers.
Yeah.
They had this big marketplace, and they would sell all their wares on every Wednesday and Sunday afternoon. And the mayor wanted to jack the prices up like 4 times what they were paying to rent these little spaces. Well, they couldn't afford that, because they were barely getting by as it was. And so they got really mad, and things got heated up, and somebody found the mayor coming out of the movie theater with a pitchfork in his chest in the street the next morning. And so tensions really got going, and the police were kind of roughing up the campesinos, and so they got mad, and they all got together, and they told us, don't go to school today. Just stay home and don't go out. Don't leave your houses. So we're watching this from our rooftop. We're looking down the Zocalo, and it's filled with campesinos with pitchforks and machetes, and they grabbed all the policemen in town, and they locked them up in their own cells.
No.
Yeah. And they're driving their police cars around, with the sirens on and honking the horns and going, hey, So we're going, yeah, good for you, So, so the Army comes in that afternoon. They show up, and all these Jeeps and trucks full of soldiers, and they're pouring out of there, and they brought a tank, of all things. And I'm looking down the street, and there's this truck carrying a tank. And the truck tries to make this turn to go into the Zocalo, and he didn't make it, and he got wedged in between 2 buildings. So there's this truck with a tank on it, wedged between 2 buildings, and he can't get it out. So the Army kind of kicked all the campesinos out of the Zocalo, and they took back over, and they discovered that the campesinos had taken all the keys to all the cells. So they couldn't let the cops out of their own cells.
Oh, my Lord.
So they had to send the police into Puebla to find all the keys they could find, so that would fit any kind of cell. And they finally, that night, they got them out of their own cells in prison. Wow. And then it took them all night to get that truck backed out of it was wedged in so hard. I don't know why he took the turn so hard, but they had to get other trucks to push him out of there and then take the tank back to Mexico City or wherever it came from. But this kind of stuff just went on. I mean, you never knew what was going to happen next, with this place. It was crazy. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know how long I took, but...
Well, I'll tell you what. What other stories do you have from there?
Oh, from Cholula?
Yeah, but I'm just saying. Keep telling.
Oh, the way we swung the election?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was something. There's this buddy of ours, his name was Gerardo Martinez, and he was for liberal arts, and he's running against this guy from Venezuela. I don't remember his name, but anyway, the guy from Venezuela was very popular. You know, he's kind of a ladies' man, and all the women, oh, we love you, because all the secretaries and everybody could vote for the student body president. You didn't have just have to be a student. So all these secretaries are going, oh, you know, we love this. Yeah. So the student body was very powerful. I mean, they really had a lot of authority, surprisingly enough. Anyway, so this guy was way ahead. You know, this guy is going to win by a landslide. And then we're going to have an engineering guy as president, You know, we're done for. So he said, we got to get Gerardo in there. So we did these interviews, and we had the other guy at the bottom of the page, and he's like this, you know, and you know, and we took all these pictures of him and found the worst poses we could find, stuck them in the underneath him, and Gerardo sitting there like this, you know, he's speaking intelligently, thoughtfully, you know, So, Gerardo, all these great pictures of him, you know. Gerardo Martinez, you know, and all this accomplishments he's made and everything, and then the other guy down below in this little tiny type, and you know, so.
Oh my gosh!
And so then the night before the election, we bought a whole roll of butcher paper. Oh, and then we invented this new party, Universal, because it's the same in Spanish as it is in English, and that was a party for everybody. And we wanted the Mexican vote because they had the most votes. So we did this all in Spanish, you know. Vota Mexicano con Martinez, you know, because Martinez was from Mexico. He grew up in the United States, but he was originally from Mexico. I mean, the guy was more American than I was, you know, but he was born in Mexico, so he was Mexican. So we made up these big banners, long, big, like 30 feet long, you know. Vota Mexicano con Martinez, you know, and Martinez Presidente, you know, and all these big, huge banner, about 30 of them. We put them up all over campus at 5 o'clock in the morning before school started. And all the students showed up, and it was just plastered in Martinez, you know. So he won by a landslide. I mean,
No.
Yeah.
What did he say to you? Like,
Gerardo?
yeah.
Oh, he said he was my buddy. You know, he was.
Yeah, but I mean, did he say
he
think
said,
we could do it?
Yeah, no, he was more surprised than anybody that he won. You know, he said, "Geez, I was losing by a landslide, now I won by it." You know, so he kind of made the other guy look pretty bad, and made him look great. You know, they didn't know he was Mexican. They thought he was an American because he was like an American, right, you know. Right. So we turned him back into a Mexican, and he won.
Wow. Completely 180 the whole thing. Wow.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, that was funny. Yeah.
Oh.
We
so
had
you
a lot
had
of fun.
some influence in through the paper?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, we did a lot of borderline stuff.
Okay.
The name of the newspaper was called La Mosca because it means a fly, and that's you know, it's a joke. The national bird of Mexico is a fly, you know, because they're all over the place. Wow. So we had this fly, La Mosca, with the Popocatépetl, the big, you know, volcano that we saw in the background over the school, and we had this University of Americas on there, you know, and the logo. This fly was sitting on a logo, eating the logo. And every week the logo would be more and more eaten by this fly. Wow. Until it was gone. And we had a picture of the dean of students, and we put him in the face of where the Mad Hatter was, you know, with the Mad Hatter hat and all that stuff. And we did, you know, we made fun of a lot of the people there, but we got away with it. And we ran ads like... wanted new administration, no sense of caring for students necessary, you know, and all that kind of stuff.
Oh my God! Wow.
So one year we had this election, and we elected this guy, and he was an American guy, and he never showed up the next year for school. He was gone. The guy disappeared. We didn't know what happened to him. We didn't know if he got deported or in prison or what, you know. Because he was kind of a wild guy, and so we put his picture on the front page with a big question mark on it and saying, "Presidente disappears," you know, say "Desapareció el presidente," you know. There were in ads in the classified saying, "Anyone with any sightings of the president of our president, you know, will be rewarded," you know.
Wow.
Oh my
So we had to have a special election to elect another president for the student body. But oh boy, it was. We kind of. Well, we didn't run the school, but we sure did come close to it.
I'd say you did.
Mm.
You know.
Well, it's 1,500 students, you know. I mean, yeah, but
Wow.
it was an experience, a beautiful experience. Everybody had to be bilingual to graduate, so everybody would speak in both languages, and got to know some really nice people from Mexico City. A lot of the Mexicans were from there, and we'd go to their houses on weekends, and because we had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off, so got to know the country pretty well.
And how long? 4 years you were there?
I spent 5 years total down there. Oh, one of the years, I wanted to do an independent study with this new girlfriend, and so he wrote up this proposal, and he said, "Did I tell you about the Amazon thing? What we did?
Yeah, about the Amazon, yeah.
How we wrote up the proposal to get 45 units?
Yeah.
We were going to be gone a year."
Yep.
Anyway, I was gone for over a year, and they wrote me a letter saying, if you don't come back here and present it, you know, you're not going to get your credit. So, but the guy that I work for, this is my boss. This is my boss, Mike Silikas. He's wrestling in Anaconda there.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was fun doing that. And
Wow.
I told you the story about the lady who was the author of that book called Witch Doctor's Apprentice.
Wow.
So when we were working our way down the headwaters in these trading canoes, it took us 3 months to get there.
Yeah.
My girlfriend almost killed me. Wound up in this almost deserted village for 2 weeks, no food. Anyway, so what were we talking about? Oh, the Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah. So I'd moved back into town, into Leticia, from that fish camp because I cut my hand up pretty bad. And I'm taking these two ladies out, American ladies, out on the little. We're going to see the Tacuna tribe, you know. So I was taking them in the boat, and she said, I had a motorman there, you know, driving the boat, and they said, "Have you ever read Witch Doctor's Apprentice?" You know. And I said, "Yeah, what a joke." And I said, that would never happen, you know. And they said, "This is Marjorie, whatever, the lady who wrote the book." She was sitting there next to her.
No.
And I said, "We'll go back and we'll get another tour guide. We'll get a different tour guide." And she said, "We didn't need one in the first place, but Mike Zilick has made us stuck with you, you know." And I went, "Oh, God, no." So the whole day it was like, oh no, what am I going to say next that's going to get me in trouble? I had these ladies for 4 days. Every day was like, oh God, I don't want to go to work today. Anyway, so I took us on a jungle walk and I got lost. And we kept on going and going and going. And they said, this is supposed to be a 15-minute walk. We're going like 45 minutes, you know. I'm going, I don't know where the river is. I have no idea where I am. I'm just on this trail. So I see this Tacuna guy come up, and I asked him, I said, which way is the river? You know, he said, that way. I said, oh, thank you very much. And they said, you know, so I took him out on that trail, you know, and they said, what are you guys talking about? Oh, I asked him how his dad was doing. He's been sick lately, you know. I didn't know the guy, you know. I said, oh, that's very considerate, you know. So we get back to the river, and I said, oh, Leticia's that way. So, you know, it's like a 3-hour, 15-minute jungle walk. So I got her back to the town.
They're exhausted.
Oh, you know, you don't have any reference down there because
Nope.
you're in this jungle and you can't hear the river, and there's no reference for north, south, east, or west. So you just have to keep it in your head. You know, if I walk this way, that means I'm walking. You know, you have to remember where you're going, which is hard.
Well, the river goes up and down so much.
Yeah,
The
22
rainy
feet.
season.
Yeah.
That's
Sometimes
the
it's
key.
30 miles wide, sometimes it's 4 miles wide, but sometimes it's a mile wide. But where we were, it was about 3 miles wide. But you'd see freighters come up into there.
Yeah.
And my last tour, did I tell you the CIA agent that I had?
No.
Yeah, anyway, so
I want to hear
my
it. Please
last
tell it.
He was my last. I had him for 4 days, and he said, I've been living down here for 3 years, and I've never really seen the Amazon. And I said, well, where were you? And he said, Medellin, and all these places where, that's where the cartels live. He said, yeah, that's where they live. And he said, so I took him to the Tucunas and the Yaguas, the different Indian tribes, and I love the Yaguas because all they wore were grass skirts. And they were really nice, and they were very primitive, and, they all used blowguns, and they could hit a monkey up in a tree, 50 feet away. And they made their own poison and everything, and so they would always demonstrate that, and they had these little flutes and things like that they'd make, and they'd sell to them. And the chief always wanted a 6-pack of Coke, a carton of cigarettes, and something else really unhealthy. And so, but that's what he wanted, so I'd always give him a 6-pack of Coke and a carton of cigarettes, and, how else can I kill you here, Yeah. No wonder why you guys are almost extinct,
Oh, my.
And my boss had bought all these islands. He built the hospital, he built the airport, the runway, and he built he built several restaurants and all this stuff, and he bought these islands to preserve these Indians. And he kind of planted them there. And he took all these Yaguas, this tribe, he put them on this island so they would be protected, by the water. Nobody could go there except for his tour guides. And that's how he protected them. And he kept them alive because there were 50,000 of them in the 60s, and when I got there, there were 1,500 left. So they were diminishing rapidly. So he was protecting them, and he was protecting the Tucunas. He did the same thing with them. And I'd tell you about the agua ardiente story with the Tucunas and the fertility ceremony. We were up in this lodge. I was running this lodge up the river, and it was in Peru, on this island in Peru. And we decided it'd be a cool idea. That's when the guy, Beleño, almost stabbed that chambermaid in the chest, She called him an hijo de puta. Anyway, it was right after that he said, there's this tribe of Tucunas living across the river over there. And, when a girl has her first period, they have puberty ceremony, and they pluck all their hair out of their heads. And if she has a boyfriend, they can have sex. And if she doesn't, well, anything goes. So, but they run around with these sticks from these trees that look like a penis, and they grow up like this, and they run around with these sticks with these, So we said, well, let's have them come over and do a fertility ceremony for these. There's a boat full of people, there's like 70 people. Let's have them do a fertility ceremony for them, She said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Well, what do we pay him for it? And he said, well, we've got a few gallons of agua ardiente here. We can just give them a little bit, And so they found out where it was, and they drank all of it, and they were just hammered and running around at the tourists, and poking these things at the women. The women are running around like this. They're going, ah! They're running back to their rooms, and screaming and everything. The Yaguas or the Tucunas are chasing them down the hallway, these sticks on. It just got so out of hand. It was completely out of hand. And I'm looking at Beleño and thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do, And he said, we got to get them back on the boats. And he said, I tell you what, I got one more gallon of agua ardiente that I hid. And he said, I'll go over to the village and leave it there and tell them they've got a gallon over there if they leave right now, So we got them all away. We said, we're never going to do that again.
Oh, man.
It was totally out of control. I mean, we had no control over the situation at all.
That's the only way they left is...
Yeah, just to bribe them, to get them to leave. With all their fertility sticks, I said, can you guys leave a couple of those behind, And I had one as a souvenir, and that was embarrassing.
What happened?
So, well, I'm coming into Mexico, and they're going through my luggage, and they find one of these things. It looks like a dildo,
Yeah.
And the guy looks at me at customs, and I said, it's a strange tree that grows in the Amazon. He kind of shakes his head, like this, I don't think so.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, that was something. And I left my girlfriend down there. Did I tell you that part?
Yeah.
Well, we weren't getting along.
Yeah, but didn't she end up with the guy that was running it?
No, well, she was his secretary, but
They're just secretary. I had it
yeah,
wrong.
no, she didn't wind up with him. She wound up with the motor guy, motorboat guy.
No, the motorboat
Well,
guy.
after I had left, but so what happened was, she went into work, and we lived with this English couple, and they were both tour guides. They had been doing it for years, so they they all went to work, and I said, "Oh, I've got a late tour, so I don't have to go in right now." So I packed up all my stuff, which was fit in a duffel bag. And I got a ride to the airport, and that was it. The planes left on Wednesday and Sunday. And I caught the plane to Bogota, Mexico City. And Mexico City, I went back to the university and left Genevieve a little note saying, "I'm sorry, we weren't getting along very well, so I thought you might be happier without me," I guess. So anyway, and we still talk today, So she stayed down there 2 more years.
Did she?
Yeah.
She
It was
liked it down there.
paradise. It was
Yeah.
paradise.
Oh, well, that's, yeah.
I mean, it really was. It was paradise.
Can't argue with that. Yeah.
No.
Beautiful.
Anyway, it was a great time in
Oh, my
Latin
gosh.
America. Yeah, I loved it. I loved it. Everywhere I went, except for El Salvador. Oh, and one day Jeff got thrown in jail. Jeff didn't come home one night. We were in Acajutla living with Fred and Audrey.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't come home one night. Next morning, I thought, what happened to Jeff? So, I didn't see him all day, and so I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll go down to the police station and find out. So I go down to the police station, and we had this little fold-up bike. He was riding the bike around. The cops arrested him for not having a license plate. They threw him in jail.
You're kidding.
No, so I went down there, and I said, well, what's the fine? And it was like $2.
Oh.
And I said, he didn't have $2 on him? They said, no, he was pretty drunk. He had spent all his money.
Oh, wow.
I thought he was too cheap.
Well, he was that too. He probably took $2 down with him and spent it all in a bar. Oh, so yeah, I got him out of jail, but
But that's the way it is everything's a bribe.
everything. 'Cause if you have money, you can do anything you want. Or if you have power.
Yep.
Did I tell you about the friends of ours that got framed, put in jail for marijuana?
Tell us.
Well, we were in
I wanna hear.
San Blas. We were in San Blas surfing, of course. Went down there pretty often, staying at Maria's, and it was an Easter week. So all these people showed up from Pasadena. And there were 9 of us in this little house, and they had hammocks strung up all over. Oh, the rat story, too. I got to tell you that. Did I tell you that with the rat story? No, anyway.
No.
We had these hammocks hung up, and so these guys were goofy foot, so they
Right.
wanted to go to Santa Cruz. And so they had left waves, goofy foot waves. So, you had to drive through the jungle, and it was about 5 miles, and there's this hitchhiker there, and he had a little backpack with him. Picked him up, and he got in the back of the car, and they drive around another bend in the road. It was a little dirt road. There were like 15 federales there with assault rifles, and they were all pointing them at them. And they pulled over, and they said, "Get out of the car." So they got out of the car. This hitchhiker kind of just disappeared, and they went straight to the back seat. They looked underneath, and there's a kilo pot. It was a whole setup. The whole thing was a setup. The hitchhiker had this with him, and he said, "I'll put it under the seat, pull him over, about, get out of there." And he got paid, because they had to pay thousands of dollars to get out of prison. And yeah, so what happened was they were going to go to prison for 10 years. And we didn't know what happened to them, and their car I guess they confiscated their car. They just took it. And they're in prison, so 6 months later, we were down there again. And one of their mothers, it was Chuck and Dave. Chuck's mother gave us this big suitcase for both of them to clothes and stuff like that. And so we walk up to the prison and go up to the prison in Tepic. That's the capital of Nayarit, that state. And we go up to the prison and we say, "Can we give this to, Chuck and Dave?" And they said, "Get the hell out of here. You're going to be in there with them, and take your suitcase." And So I got kind of mad, and I thought, they were framed in the first place, and now they won't even let them. So I called up Maria, the other Maria,
Yeah.
Urquiza de Los Angeles. So I called her up, and I said, Maria, is there somebody you can just call and just say, can we just drop the suitcase off? Can you just pull a couple of strings for us? And she said, I'll be there tomorrow morning.
What?
From Mexico City. And I went, holy mackerel. So she was this really high-powered attorney that could argue in front of the Supreme Court of Mexico. She was part of that, one of the few, because she was in that family. So she always had a bodyguard and a chauffeur in a limo. So next morning, I told her where Maria's house was. She shows up with her bodyguard, and the bodyguard was a female, this woman. And I know she had probably 10 guns on her and knew karate and everything else. She looked like, you wouldn't want to mess with her. So, they pull up, Mom, Maria, ¿cómo está? Because I had taken her out to dinner a bunch of times when we were down in Acapulco, with money that I didn't have, That's when we skipped the bill. We thought we were going to get some money, so we stayed at the Acapulco Yacht Club. We're getting drinks, we're buying dinner, we're getting all this food. I was taking her out to dinner, taking her out sailing and all this stuff. She gave me a camera, and we became good friends and rode each other all the time. And so she got up there, and so she said, "Oh, okay, I know where the warden's office is." Mm-hmm. So we go into Nayarit, and you could see in the plate glass windows, he's got his feet on his desk, he's reading a newspaper like this, So she gets out of the car and walks in there, and she goes, you could hear her doors open, and she's holding up her credentials like this, and the guy peeks over like this, and he drops a newspaper and jumps up and like this, and she said, she's talking to him like this, He says, he's shaking his head, and, okay, follow me, so he gets in his car, and we get back in the car, we follow him to the prison, Get to the prison, they're all saluting him, and then he tells them who she is, and she gets out, and they're all saluting her, and then we get out of the car, and they're looking at us going, oh my God, it's the same gringos we saw the other day. So I hand them the suitcase, and they say, oh yeah, of course we'll get it. Oh yeah, no problem. And a week and a half later, they were on a plane back to L.A.
No.
Yeah, she got them out.
Maria got them out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and
it's who you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But they were free.
Wow.
And it was tough in there. They had spent about 6 months in there, and they said it was a nightmare.
How much weight did they lose?
A lot, because you had to pay for your own food. Or you just got rice and beans. That's all you got, rice and beans.
Wow.
If you wanted something else, you had to buy it. You had to pay for it.
Yeah.
So. Wow. Yeah, and they got in their share of, beefs with people, and it was a nice place. Anyway, they got out, and Maria got them out. But, I was just so lucky to meet her.
Yeah.
And get along with her so well, and I knew her for all those years. Because I'd see her when I go to Mexico City. We'd get together and go out to dinner, and we became very good friends. And she came up to California. After I had left, she came to California, and she went to my parents' house, and my parents didn't know who she was. And they invited her in, and, they had coffee together, and they had no idea who she was. And I'm thinking, Mom and Dad, this gal is, treat her like, give her the red carpet treatment, She's not just some Mexican girl that came up and wanted a handout or something. No, she would give you a handout. You're the ones who are poor, not her.
Right.
Oh, God.
You're the ones that are poor.
Yeah, I met some amazing people, just lucky, and I had the worst luck and the best luck. I never had any just in-between luck.
Yeah.
I was either in a hospital or a jail or sailing in heaven, and
Or swimming after a surfboard. Yeah. For 6
I didn't even
hours.
pay attention to the sharks or the poisonous snakes or any of the other stuff, and the lightning, hitting all around me.
Or the crocodiles.
Yeah.
That river mouth. You had to have crocs and a river mouth.
Yeah, I thought Jeff was crazy for surfing that.
Well, he was crazy.
Yeah. Well, he was. He came up to visit me in Florida one time, and he said, "Hey, Danny, I got my passenger's license to do an ultralight plane, and let's rent one, and I'll take you out flying." And I thought, oh boy, this is like his first time with a passenger, and it ain't me, babe,
Yeah. I'm not gonna be
I
your
know
guinea
you. I know Jeff. Yeah, I remember the time he thought it was perfectly fine to anchor when we were Monachin Bay. When we were leaving San Blas, we anchored in Monachin Bay, and I said, Jeff, we're too close. The tide's gonna go out. And he said, No. I think the tide's coming in. We'll be fine. So we're anchored there, and we went surfing and had dinner and went to sleep. At 3:00 in the morning, the boat is in about 6 inches of water. It was sitting on the keel. And all of a sudden it just went boom, fell over. We were high and dry,
Wow, yeah.
So as the tide went out, the no-see-ums came out with the tide. And we were covered in no-see-ums.
That's no fun.
I mean, they were everywhere, crawling under our sheets, it was 3:00 in the morning. And we had to wait like 8 hours or 10 hours for the tide to come back in so we could get out of there. It was, God. This is perfectly safe to sail in here at night, Turns out there's a reef right in the middle of the entrance, and we did that all the time. I don't know how we made it out alive.
It's luck.
Yeah, that mixed luck.
Yep. Yeah, it's that Mackin luck.
It was good luck, yeah.
ML Mackin
luck.
Yeah,
there you have it.
Love it.
Well, thanks for having me.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Love it. And I didn't. We were without Bob Thornton today, but we had Abu today. I'll tell you what, a special guest host, and
thank
Seth. And I'll tell you what, thank you for keeping it running, and thank you.
Pleasure to be here.
Dan, just amazing. Your life just blows me away, and it just, it's so fun.
You got me to start writing my book again, so I'm writing that, yeah.
Please write it.
Yeah, I'm going to finish that, yeah.
We need more books.
Yeah, we need more books.
Because with AI, that's one thing that I think people will get, after they get overloaded on AI.
Yeah, they're going
to start reading more books again. I think that maybe it's a long shot, but
yeah,
I think when AI can do so much, and AI can, I think a lot of your things, whether it's lawyers or whatever, AI is going to replace so much of that.
It will.
And I mean, secretaries and stuff like this, it's going to go. But I think books will.
And AI couldn't make this stuff up.
No.
Mm-mm. And I think I'm going to title it maybe Robinson Crusoe meets The Exorcist, something like that.
Wow.
Love it.
Sounds more like like Indiana Jones adventure. That's very cool.
That's very cool.
It was
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Love it.
Thank you. Love it.
Ivan's got the